Hello, I'm Grayson. At 26 years of age, I reside in a quaint, serene town known as Westfield, nestled in the northeastern region of the United States. I've spent my entire life in this place, where familiarity runs deep and everyone is connected, though at times it can feel a bit overwhelming. However, I enjoy my time here. It's serene and cozy, a place where I've crafted my existence, one that brings me a great deal of contentment. My journey with Eliza has spanned nearly 3 years. She is the one who holds my heart. It may seem like a common saying, yet it holds genuine truth. Our journey has been filled with highs and lows, much like any relationship, yet the circumstances of our meeting instilled in me a sense of destiny, or however one might describe it. Our encounter took place in a cafe, of all settings. I have just wrapped up a lengthy day at the office. Marketing, well, it's nothing particularly thrilling. I stopped by to pick up a coffee before making my way home. Eliza perched by the window, engrossed in a book while cradling her cup of tea. Initially, I dismissed it, seeing her as just another attractive girl, nothing particularly remarkable. As I placed my coffee order and made my way to a seat, I noticed she was the sole figure remaining at the counter. For some inexplicable reason, rather than simply grabbing my coffee and heading out, I found myself taking a seat and engaging in conversation with her. Initially, our conversation didn't delve into anything deep or significant. It was just the typical exchanges, such as inquiries about each other's day and what we were up to, and so on. Yet, there was an undeniable quality about her, a certain way she gazed at me that brought a sense of comfort, as if I were conversing with a long-lost companion. I found myself sitting there for more than an hour, and before I realized it, I had asked for her number. This time, I let go of the overthinking. As we look ahead to the near future, the exciting news is that our wedding is just a few weeks away. The memory of the moment I first understood I was in love with her lingers vividly in my mind. It wasn't a spectacular event, it was simply how she could bring a smile to my face after a challenging day, or how deeply she valued the small details. From the very beginning, her thoughtfulness and patience shone through, making it clear to me that she was someone I wanted to keep in my life for the long haul. Yet, this isn't solely about her, not in the strictest sense. It concerns an event that took place a few weeks prior to our wedding. Eliza has an older sister, Vivian. At 31 years old, she has spent the last 5 years living overseas. She serves as a consultant in the art realm, primarily across Europe. Eliza has consistently expressed a blend of admiration and frustration when discussing her. Vivian has consistently embraced her independence, exploring the world and experiencing adventures that Eliza has yet to undertake. I had heard countless tales of Vivian, yet our paths had never crossed. That is, until she returned for the wedding. It was a significant moment for Eliza, particularly given the long time they had spent apart. I felt a thrill at the prospect of meeting her, yet a hint of anxiety lingered in the background. Understanding the intricacies of family relationships, right? My initial encounter with Vivian took place at the residence of Eliza's parents. Eliza had been discussing her for weeks. She was arriving for the wedding and would be staying with them for a while. Upon finally seeing her, I found myself momentarily stunned. Vivian stood apart. I don't intend any negativity, it's just that she exuded a certain presence. It took me by surprise. It's hard to put into words, but there was a certain assurance about her that felt unfamiliar to me. She had a quiet presence, yet her words commanded attention. As I entered the living room, I found her perched on the couch, delicately sipping from a glass of wine. Eliza made the introductions, and I endeavored to maintain my politeness, yet an unsettling energy lingered in the atmosphere, leaving me feeling disoriented. Vivian beamed and extended her hand for a shake. There was a serene composure to her demeanor that captivated me. However, I promptly reassured myself that it was merely due to the fact that I was encountering a family member for the first time. I dismissed it at first, but as the night unfolded, Vivian and I found ourselves crossing paths repeatedly, engaging in light conversation and exchanging curious inquiries. With each conversation we shared, I sensed a transformation within myself. A flicker of something unexpected ignited within me, yet I found it elusive, just out of reach. She spoke to me as if I were more than just Eliza's fiancé. She regarded me as if I were someone deserving of her attention. There was an unsettling quality to it. Initially, I believed I was merely conjuring up illusions. She had a certain allure, undoubtedly, but that held no significance. I was committed to Eliza, and that settled it. Yet, whenever Vivian and I shared a glance or engaged in conversation, it seemed as though there was a deeper layer waiting to be uncovered. As the night wore on, after Eliza had settled into her bed, Vivian and I lingered, engaging in conversation for a time. An unspoken ease lingered between us, one that defied explanation. She appeared as if she had never left, as though the years had simply melted away. She felt like a presence that had woven itself into the fabric of my existence for much longer. A persistent sensation lingered within me, suggesting she had a message to convey. And that was the moment it dawned on me. For the first time, it dawned on me that Vivian might be more than just the older sister I had always heard stories about. Perhaps she was something altogether different. That was absolutely wild, wasn't it? She was, after all, the sister of Eliza. Nothing was destined to occur. I refused to entertain such thoughts. Yet, beneath the surface, I sensed that my encounter with Vivian had irrevocably altered the course of my life. The days following my encounter with Vivian were quite an experience. She occupied my thoughts endlessly, yet an unsettling sensation lingered that I couldn't dismiss. Whenever Eliza and I discussed or arranged details for the wedding, the thought of Vivian hovered in my thoughts. I realized how absurd I was being. I was on the verge of marrying Eliza, and Vivian was merely her sister. That ought to have concluded the matter. However, the situation was far from straightforward. With the wedding plans unfolding, Eliza and Vivian found themselves sharing countless moments together. It was entirely logical, naturally. After years apart, Vivian found herself back, but only for a fleeting moment. Yet, I found it impossible to overlook the emotions Vivian continued to evoke within me. Whenever our paths intertwined, I found myself captivated by her presence, be it the way her laughter resonated through the space or the lingering gaze she held on me for just a heartbeat longer than necessary. It wasn't explicit or suggestive, yet there was an undercurrent, an intangible quality that stirred a sense of discomfort within me. I repeatedly reassured myself that it was merely a figment of my imagination, yet it was increasingly difficult to dismiss. One evening, Eliza retired to her bed early, weary from the day's happenings. As I settled onto the porch with a cold beer in hand, I sought to unwind after yet another exhausting day filled with wedding preparations. Vivian stepped outside to join me, holding a glass of wine. She settled next to me with a smile, her presence both soothing and slightly unsettling. "Would it be all right if I joined you?" she inquired, savoring a sip of her wine. "Absolutely not," I responded, attempting to keep my tone relaxed. "I would appreciate some companionship." We lingered in quietude for a moment, enveloped by the gentle murmur of the twilight breeze. It wasn't unpleasant, however. It truly felt strangely familiar, as if our connection spanned beyond just a matter of days. After a moment, she remarked, "I'm truly pleased for you and Eliza. You both complement each other beautifully." I nodded, attempting to conceal the tightness that had settled in my stomach. "Thank you. I genuinely feel fortunate. She is truly remarkable." Vivian observed me intently, her eyes keen yet gentle. "It seems she's always held a special affection for you. Since the day you crossed paths, she couldn't stop mentioning you." I let out a nervous chuckle. I was completely unaware. "Indeed," she smiled, yet it lacked the warmth of her typical expression. It was an experience unlike any other, tinged with a sense of melancholy. "She is fortunate to have you." At a loss for words, I simply lifted my beer for another sip. The atmosphere was charged, a palpable weight lingering between us, reminiscent of a truth we both hesitated to confront. We carried on our discussion for some time after that, yet the tone of our exchange seemed to shift. Each word she uttered carried a depth that eluded my understanding. She remained the same Vivian, yet a new sharpness defined her presence, an intensity that had previously been absent. It wasn't merely her words, It was the way her gaze lingered on me when she believed I was oblivious to her presence. The way her gaze held for just a heartbeat longer than necessary. It seemed as though she was attempting to convey a message, yet I was unable to decipher its meaning. The night concluded with her rising and retreating indoors, leaving me solitary with my reflections. I lingered for a moment, gazing into the vacant yard, attempting to comprehend the unfolding events. In just a few weeks, I was set to marry Eliza. This was not meant to occur. Vivian was her sister, and I had no right to feel the way I did. Yet, it stood before me. I could no longer ignore the truth. Vivian was more than merely Eliza's sister. She was extraordinary. And I found myself in a predicament. In the days that followed, I made an effort to maintain my distance. I concentrated on Eliza, on the wedding, on all that was meant to be significant. Yet, it proved to be quite challenging. Whenever Vivian was near, an unspoken connection seemed to draw us together. She wasn't engaging in any blatant actions. She remained as courteous and aloof as always. Yet, the tension was palpable. It felt as though we were treading a delicate boundary between two realms, and I found myself uncertain of the path to take. The most challenging aspect was my utter confusion about how to navigate these overwhelming emotions. I found it difficult to discuss it with Eliza. I found it difficult to engage in conversation with anyone, honestly. I was meant to be in love with Eliza, and indeed, I was. Yet, there was Vivian, and I found it impossible to overlook the emotions she stirred within me. I found myself entangled in a situation of my own creation, and I was at a loss for how to escape it. Before we knew it, Vivian and I found ourselves deep in another late-night conversation. It felt as though she was poised, anticipating the perfect moment. It felt as though she was gauging the situation, waiting to see if I would take the initiative. And I chose not to. I had no desire to. Eliza captured my heart, and Vivian happened to be her sister. Yet with each conversation, the barriers that separated us appeared to dissolve just a fraction more. After yet another exhausting day filled with wedding planning, Vivian and I ended up alone once more that night. Eliza had ventured out with her parents, leaving the house enveloped in a serene silence. As I lounged on the couch, lost in the glow of my phone, Vivian settled down beside me. "Grayson," she murmured gently, her tone barely above a whisper. "I've been pondering quite a bit about what lies ahead following the wedding. I see the wonderful connection between you and Eliza, and I just want to express my happiness for both of you." But she trailed off, and for a moment, I believed I sensed a change in her tone. However, I had not. I glanced at her, and there was an enigmatic quality in her eyes that eluded me. Yet I inquired, my voice scarcely rising above a whisper. Vivian let out a deep sigh as she reclined on the couch. Yet, I can no longer overlook my emotions. My heart raced with unexpected excitement. "Could you clarify what you mean?" She paused for a moment, then met my gaze directly. "Grayson, I believe I've harbored feelings for you for quite some time now." The words struck me with the force of a blow to the stomach. I found myself at a loss for words. I found myself at a loss for what to do next. This was unimaginable. Indeed, it was. I remained still, her words reverberating in my mind. Yet, my thoughts struggled to keep pace with her words. Is Vivian in love with me? It was utterly perplexing. Surely, there must be an error here. I was on the verge of marrying Eliza. My affection for Eliza was profound. I was unable to. I really shouldn't be thinking this way. Not to mention hearing Vivian admit something like this. Yet, there she sat beside me, her gaze probing into mine, anticipating an answer. I felt the need to express something that would bring her comfort. Yet the words lodged themselves in my throat. I found it hard to comprehend that Vivian, Eliza's older sister, was experiencing feelings for me. It was overwhelming. Excessively intricate. I, Vivian, find myself at a loss for words. I finally found my voice, though it's a bit hoarse. She averted her gaze, her fingers nervously playing with the edge of her sleeve. "You don't need to say a word," she murmured softly. I simply wanted you to be aware. This has been in my possession for quite some time now. And it was gnawing at my insides. I was aware that you and Eliza were tying the knot. Yet, I could no longer maintain the facade of indifference to these emotions. A wave of remorse washed over me. My intention was never to cause Vivian any pain. She was the sister of Eliza, and her kindness towards me had always been evident. Yet, this situation was a boundary that I found utterly unfathomable. Your well-being matters to me, Vivian. You're Eliza's sister, and I understand, she interjected gently. Please don't feel any guilt. This is not on you. However, I can no longer overlook it. A moment of quiet lingered between us. A heart burdened by the heaviness of unexpressed feelings. The atmosphere was charged with an unspoken intensity, and the gap between us appeared to diminish. My heart pounded while my thoughts raced to find a resolution. What was I meant to do with this? What did Vivian anticipate from me? Vivian, you possess a remarkable beauty, and my feelings for you run deep. However, I am with Eliza. My affection for her is profound. I asserted, the words flowing with a strength I didn't truly possess. You are her sister, and that's not something I can simply overlook. I know, she whispered, interrupting me once more. I had no expectations of you, Grayson. I simply had to express what was weighing on my mind. Her voice remained composed, yet I sensed it required all her strength to utter those words. It felt like she was finally releasing a burden she had held on to for ages. It was impossible to overlook how it seemed she was allowing me to simply step away from all of this chaos. However, I did not. I was unable to. I empathized with Vivian. How could I possibly refrain? She possessed kindness, intelligence, and beauty. All that Eliza represented, infused with her distinctive vibrancy. Yet, did it truly hold any significance? I was meant to be tying the knot with Eliza. My future had already been mapped out. Each time I encountered Vivian, the uncertainty swirling in my mind became increasingly pronounced. Each time she flashed that smile in my direction, the magnetic attraction I experienced was impossible to overlook. I wasn't naive enough to think that this was simple, that this was right. I rose to my feet, attempting to dispel the discomfort that was settling in my bones. I believe it would be best to let this conversation fade into oblivion. There's nothing I can change regarding that, Vivian. You are the sibling of Eliza. And I adore her. I'm not able to engage with that. Vivian gazed up at me, her eyes probing mine for an extended moment. In that moment, it seemed she had fully embraced my words, rising to her feet as well. I understand, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. I aim to avoid any discomfort. I simply wanted to express my truth to you. You made the right choice, Vivian, I said, even though my words seemed empty. I was uncertain about their validity. You'll discover a person who shares your feelings. Simply not for me. She offered a subtle smile, yet a hint of sorrow lingered in her gaze. I have no doubt about it. She pivoted and made her way to the door, yet just before exiting, she hesitated and cast a look back in my direction. Thank you for your attention, Grayson. Your happiness is truly important to me. Thank you, Vivian. I expressed my hope for your happiness, even as doubt lingered in my mind. Not at this moment. As soon as the door clicked shut, I exhaled a breath I hadn't known I was holding in. The heaviness of the dialogue, the burden of the secret she had entrusted to me, lingered like a looming storm cloud. A lingering sensation enveloped me, suggesting that this dialogue, this revelation, was merely the prologue to a much grander narrative. An unexpected turn of events. I needed to clear my thoughts completely. Eliza's return was imminent, and I had to remain unaffected by it. I had to remain steadfast, unaffected by Vivian's emotions towards me. Yet, beneath the surface, I understood that this was not going to disappear. Despite my efforts to push it away, it lingered, eating away at my thoughts, a constant reminder of what was out of reach, of what I ought not to even consider. As I settled back onto the couch, Vivian's words echoed in my thoughts. I found myself captivated by you. Her words were delivered with such simplicity, yet they seemed to stir something profound within me. I had never considered Vivian in that light before. Not at all. Yet now, with all laid bare, I could no longer feign indifference to my emotions. A tiny fragment of my being, a perilous and perplexing fragment, questioned whether I had been oblivious from the very beginning. However, that was not a notion I could consider. Eliza was my beloved fiancée. My affection for her was unwavering, and nothing could alter that truth. Or perhaps it could? 2 days had slipped by since Vivian's confession, and with every hour that ticked away, the burden of it became increasingly oppressive. I attempted to set it aside, to overlook the disquieting sensation that had taken residence in the depths of my stomach. Yet, despite my best efforts, I found myself unable to succeed. It was present, perpetually hovering in the shadows, as I navigated the routine of daily existence. Eliza was away on a work trip, and I kept myself occupied, concentrating on wedding plans and all the tasks that required my attention. Yet, in moments of solitude, my mind would invariably return to thoughts of Vivian. The memory of her gaze lingered in my mind, the moment she confessed her love for me etched vividly in my thoughts. She appeared so vulnerable, yet exuded a remarkable strength, as if she had finally released a burden she had carried for years. It had been ages since I last laid eyes on Vivian, not since that fateful evening. She maintained her distance, and truthfully, I was at a loss for how to behave in her presence now. How could I possibly view her in the same light? How could I possibly act as if everything was fine after what she had said? I had not shared this with Eliza. A piece of me yearned to shield Vivian, to guard her secrets closely, while another part quaked at the thought of revealing everything to Eliza. What if it obliterated everything? What if it shattered the trust one shared with her, with Vivian? The situation was chaotic. Suddenly, without any warning, Vivian appeared at my doorstep. As the late afternoon sun cast a warm glow, I found myself at my kitchen table, sifting through wedding details when a sudden knock interrupted my thoughts. My heart raced with unexpected excitement. I was caught off guard by the arrival of someone. As I swung the door open, she stood before me, a mix of anxiety and resolve etched across her face. "Grayson," she whispered, her voice almost a breath. "May we have a conversation?" I found myself at a loss for words. The last few days had been a careful dance to sidestep this very moment, yet here it stood, unmistakably before me. I moved aside to allow her entry. "Of course, please enter." She paused briefly, then entered, surveying the apartment as if it were a new experience, despite having been there a few times prior. At last, her gaze locked onto mine, revealing a depth of intensity within. Today, she carried an air of seriousness, a newfound determination radiating from her. "Grayson," she started, inhaling deeply. "No more pretending is possible for me. I can't pretend that my feelings aren't real. This burden has weighed on me for far too long, and it's becoming unbearable. I understand that it's not right. I understand it's intricate, yet I find myself unable to change it. My heart is completely yours." I was at a loss for how to respond. My heart raced within me, and it seemed as though the walls were tightening their grip, encasing me in a suffocating embrace. This was the moment I had been fearing. "Vivian," I spoke, striving to maintain a calm tone. "It's time to put an end to this. We discussed this matter. You are the sibling of Eliza. I stand alongside Eliza. My affection for her is unwavering, and that will never alter." She flinched at my words, yet she stood her ground. She moved nearer, her gaze fixed intently on me. "I understand," she replied softly, "but I can't simply turn it off. I have made an effort. I put in so much effort, yet each time I see you or think of you, it becomes increasingly difficult. I can no longer maintain the facade of not desiring something deeper. I desire you, Grayson, and I find myself at a loss for how to put an end to this feeling." I stepped back, seeking to create some space between us. My mind was in a whirl. This was not meant to occur. This wasn't how it was meant to be experienced. My affection for Eliza has endured for what feels like an eternity. I had crafted a life alongside her, and now Vivian was casting doubt on it all. I'm at a loss for words. I spoke, my voice tight with emotion. This doesn't seem correct, Vivian. It feels impossible to turn my back on Eliza in this way. You are her sister. I refuse to be the one who causes her pain. Her expression twisted, revealing the anguish reflected in her gaze. I have no desire to cause anyone pain, Grayson. I have no desire to ruin anything. Yet, I find myself at a loss on how to navigate this existence burdened by these emotions, weighed down by this hidden truth. It's overwhelming, and I can no longer endure it. The stillness enveloped us, dense and suffocating, akin to an impenetrable fog from which there was no escape. I felt the urge to express something, to improve the situation, yet nothing appeared to fit. Each word that surfaced seemed inappropriate, mismatched. I felt the urge to connect with her, to offer solace, yet I found myself unable to do so. I was unable to accomplish that. Not when it involved putting everything on the line. Text, I need you to go, I said, my voice quivering. Please, I need you to leave. Vivian's eyes brimmed with tears, yet she remained silent. She nodded slowly, a sense of resignation washing over her, and turned toward the door. Yet, just as she extended her hand toward the handle, she hesitated, casting a glance back in my direction. I apologize, Grayson. I simply wanted you to be aware. I needed to share this with you. I could no longer contain it within myself. And with that, she vanished into thin air. I remained motionless, as if time had stretched indefinitely, absorbing the echo of her footsteps gradually disappearing into the distance. My heart felt burdened, and my thoughts swirled in a tempest of confusion and remorse. This was not meant to occur. This feeling was not meant to be mine. Yet, beneath the surface, I understood that a decision lay before me. Vivian had revealed all her cards. She expressed her feelings to me. At this moment, I had to delve into my emotions and assess what I was prepared to sacrifice. The night following Vivian's departure, sleep eluded me. Each time I shut my eyes, her face appeared before me, filled with vulnerability, desperation, and the love she had so candidly expressed. No matter how hard I tried to divert my thoughts, the image of her lingered stubbornly in my mind. The conversation kept echoing in my mind. Her voice resonated. These emotions are becoming unbearable. I understood her pain, and it pained me to know I contributed to it. What troubled me most was the uncertainty of whether I could truly set aside the emotions I felt for her. Years had passed with Eliza by my side. We had begun to envision a wedding, a shared future ahead of us. The idea of leaving her for Vivian, her own sister, was beyond comprehension. Yet, Vivian's revelation had unsettled me in ways I was reluctant to acknowledge. It had cast a shadow over all my convictions. The following day, Eliza came back from her work trip. She felt exhausted yet content to be back, and I tried my hardest to maintain a sense of normalcy. It was as if I were treading lightly, always attempting to read her emotions, questioning whether she sensed that something was amiss. Yet, I remained silent. I was unable to. Vivian had requested that I keep her confession from Eliza, and a part of me still believed it was her secret to reveal, not mine. That evening, Eliza and I gathered around the dinner table. We engaged in conversations about ordinary matters. Her journey, nuptial arrangements, and all the other matters we had been setting aside amidst the whirlwind of existence. Yet, there lingered an undercurrent of tension, an unshakable feeling that enveloped both of us. Grayson, you've seemed somewhat withdrawn recently, Eliza remarked, her gaze fixed on me as she nibbled at her salad. Is everything all right? My heart sank. Was I truly that transparent? Indeed, I responded hastily, maybe a bit too hastily. I've had a great deal swirling around in my thoughts, you know? Wedding preparations, work commitments, all of it. She appeared skeptical. Just so you know, I'm here if you want to chat. If something is troubling you. I offered a faint smile, yet it lacked the authenticity of true joy. Absolutely, without a doubt. It's simply stress, I suppose. Eliza held back her inquiries, yet it was evident that uncertainty lingered in her mind. To be truthful, I felt the same way. The weight of Vivian's confession still lingered within me. Whenever Eliza's gaze fell upon me, I couldn't shake the feeling that she might somehow perceive the turmoil within. That evening, following dinner, I took a stroll to refresh my thoughts. I had to pause and reflect on my next steps. I discovered myself in the quaint park close to our apartment, the very spot where I had whiled away countless hours before. Yet this evening, there was an unmistakable shift in the air. I settled onto a bench, the refreshing evening breeze caressing my skin, and I gently shut my eyes. My mind wandered to Vivian. I reflected on how she had gazed at me, her eyes pleading for me to grasp her emotions. There had always been an underlying connection between us, a silent understanding, yet I had never allowed myself to fully recognize it. With the words finally spoken, a transformation had taken place. She had risked everything for me, and I couldn't overlook that. Yet, my mind wandered to Eliza. I reflected on the future we envisioned, the affection we nurtured over the years. Was I really going to discard that? I couldn't let her down like that, not for something as temporary as an infatuation with her sister. A pivotal choice lay before me, one that would shape the course of my entire existence. I couldn't remain in this state of uncertainty indefinitely. I had to confront reality. I pulled out my phone and messaged Vivian, "We need to have a conversation." She responded almost instantly, asking if we could meet. I asked her to join me at the park in an hour. I felt it was essential to meet her in person, to share all my thoughts, and above all, to bring closure to everything that had been weighing on my mind. Upon her arrival, she appeared strikingly similar to the previous evening, a blend of vulnerability and resolve. The tension between us was undeniable. With a deep breath, I initiated the conversation. "Vivian, I've reflected deeply on your words. I wish to avoid causing you pain, and I have no intention of being dishonest with you. Yet, I find myself reluctant to cause any pain to Eliza. She is my entire world." Vivian's eyes glistened with unshed tears, yet she nodded, as though she had already come to terms with the inevitability of this moment. "I understand, and I certainly don't wish to create any additional issues. I wanted to express my feelings to you. I had no expectations of you. I simply couldn't hold it in any longer." "I comprehend," I replied softly, "and I truly regret complicating matters for you. Yet, my heart belongs to Eliza. My affection for her has always been unwavering. Vivian is my destiny. I wish for nothing to stand in the way of our connection." Vivian swallowed hard, and for a fleeting moment, it seemed as though she might utter another word, yet silence prevailed. She stepped back, a faint, melancholic smile gracing her lips. "I understand, Grayson. I truly do. I wanted to share this with you, just in case you've ever experienced something similar." I shook my head, a deep sorrow filling my heart for her. I long for a different reality, yet I must confront the truth within myself. "And alongside you." She nodded, her voice a mere breath of sound. "I will always stand by my decision to share that with you." I had to express it. At this moment, I am ready to release it. The stillness that enveloped us was thick, yet it carried a sense of ease. The silence enveloped them, a profound acknowledgement that their journey had reached its end. The promise that once existed has diminished, and now is the moment to let go and progress forward. Vivian turned and began to walk away, her shoulders drooping as she moved. I observed her departure, a weight settling in my heart. And just like that, the final page was turned. The following day, I shared all my thoughts with Eliza. The reality surrounding Vivian's admission. I noticed the pain reflected in her gaze, yet I also recognized her resilience. She felt a surge of anger, certainly, yet there was a clarity in her understanding. She understood that this wasn't my doing, and there was no anger directed towards me. The remainder of the day was devoted to deep conversation, truly engaging in dialogue about the events that had transpired and our plans for the future. I assured her that I would always be open and honest from now on, and we came to a mutual understanding to move forward together. Though the journey was challenging, it ultimately made us more resilient. I came to understand that love is not defined by perfection or the absence of difficult times. It was about confronting challenges directly, gaining insights from them, and selecting the path you wish to take, even when the way forward is uncertain. Eliza was the one I desired, and I was certain beyond any hesitation that I had made the correct decision. I wished for Vivian to carve out her own journey, one that was separate from mine. We both required some time to mend, yet at least now we could progress forward,